Your goal after watching this video is to know how to solve one-step equations by multiplying or dividing. Okay, so first, quick review of the basics that you're going to need to know to be successful at this. When you divide something by itself, okay, so 4 divided by 4. Negative 2 divided by negative 2. X divided by x. When you divide something by itself, you get 1. You always get 1. When you divide something, right, so let's say we have something, let's say again it's 4, and you divide it by a number, just randomly pick 2, and then multiply it by that same number, so 4 divided by 2 times 2, you get, well, in this case, 4 divided by 2 is 2, times 2 is 4. So you get back to the original thing you have. All right, another example of this, let's do 27. All right, this time let's go divided by 3. All right, we want to get back to 27, so if we multiply by 3, right, 27 divided by 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. So again, if we divide something by a number, in this case 3, and then multiply it by that same number, we get back to what we started with. That's because multiplying and dividing are inverse operations. They undo each other. They are opposites. Okay, so quick reminder. Your goal when you're solving an equation is to get the variable alone. So make sure you get that written down again. I want you to come away from one big thing in this lesson, and that is, again, the goal of solving an equation is to get the variable alone. Okay. In this, we already touched on multiplication and division are inverse. I-N-V-E-R-S-E. Inverse operations, they undo each other. So you multiply something by 10 and divide it by 10, you're back to what you started with. Seems like common sense. Here's the word for that common sense. Inverse operations. All right, so we're going to look at part A first. And it says solve x divided by 3 equals negative 6. So what that is saying is what number divided by 3 equals negative 6. And some of you know already, but I want you to understand the process so when the equations get harder and you don't just know by looking at them, you know how you can get to the answer mathematically. So first thing I'm going to think to myself is goal, get the variable alone. Here is the variable. What did they do to it? They divided by 3. If you prefer to see that written like this, x divided by 3, you can rewrite it. I would like you to draw lines down the middle to separate your equation into two sides. I'll be looking for that when I check your notes. And then I'm going to say, okay, I need to get this alone. What did they do to the variable? They divided by 3. So how can I get back to just the variable? I can multiply 3. Because if you divide something by 3 and multiply it by 3, you're back to what you started with. However, if I'm multiplying by 3 on the left, I also have to multiply by 3 on the right. All right, x divided by 3 times 3 is just x. And negative 6 times 3 is negative 18, I think. All right, so my variable is alone, my equation is solved. Next thing I need you to do off to the right is check your answer, make sure that really works. So we're going to go back up here to our original equation, and this time instead of writing x divided by 3 equals negative 6, we're going to write what we think the value of x is. We think x is negative 18. So we're going to take negative 18 divided by 3 and make sure that that equals negative 6. So negative 18 divided by 3, is that really negative 6? Looks like it to me. So we did that one correctly, and that's what the check is for. The check is to check if we did that correctly or not. So, here, colors. All right. Let's go to part B. Solve 18 equals negative 4 times y. Remember, a number right next to a variable means times. So that says negative 4 times y. If you would rather write it out like this, 18 equals negative 4 times y, you can. All right, so again, divide your equation into two parts. One, the left side and the right side. And then we need to say, okay, our goal is to get the variable alone. Here's the variable. What did they do to the variable? They multiplied by negative 4. So if we divide by negative 4, On this side, negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1. So we're left with positive 1y, or just y. Right? And 18 divided by negative 4, that would be 1 for your calculator. And, whoops, we don't need all that. All right, negative 4.5. Is my variable alone? Yes. All right, so that's telling me that for this equation to work, y would have to be negative 4.5. We're going to check our answer. So we're going to go back to our original equation. And instead of writing negative 4 times y, we're going to write negative 4 times negative 4.5. So I'm just going to rewrite my equation. 18 equals negative 4 times y, which we now know is the same as negative 4.5. And does that really equal positive 18? Well, we've got negative times negative, so that's positive. 4 times 4.5 is 18, so we're good. Again, at any point, if you need to pause and write something down, do that. All right, now, this looks way harder, but it's not. All right, it's the same process that we just used. So here, again, we have an equation. Our goal, to get the variable alone, always the same goal. So I'm going to look at the side with the variable. And I'm going to say, okay, what are they doing to the variable? They're taking it times negative 4/5. I'm going to rewrite that. Equals negative 8. All right? So we need to undo what they did to the variable. So if you have something and you multiply it by 4/5, negative 4/5, to get back to that something, you also then need to divide it by negative 4/5. All right, and I need to take the other side and divide it by negative 4/5. I want you to stop and think. Does that make sense? They multiplied the variable by negative 4/5, so we're dividing it by negative 4/5. Are you good with that part? Okay, so now I know that over here, the multiplying negative 4/5 and dividing negative 4/5 just gets me back to whatever I started with, which was x. Over here, I have to do a little bit more math. So negative 8, I'm going to write it as a fraction, negative 8 over 1, divided by negative 4/5. Remember, when we divide, we can change divide to multiply, and we can take the reciprocal of the fraction that follows the division sign. So we're going to change that instead to 5/4. The negative, we're going to just leave up top. You could move it down with this 4, but it doesn't really matter. The negative in a fraction can be with the numerator or the denominator. Still means the same thing. All right, and now I just multiply this out. So x equals negative 8 times negative 5 over 1 times 4. Negative 8 times negative 5 is 40. Positive. 4 times 1 is 4. I can simplify this further because I know that 40 divided by 4 is 10. Now I'm going to take my solution, what I think x is, and check my answer. Negative 4/5 times x, or negative 4/5 times 10. Is it really negative 8? Negative 4 times 10 is negative 40. So we get negative 40 over 5, which divides out to be negative 8. So we're good. All right. Last, the record low temperature in Arizona is 1.6 times the record low temperature in Rhode Island. What is the record low temperature in Rhode Island? So basically, somebody for us kindly just wrote out the problem right there, okay? And we are going to fill in what they have, the record low in Arizona. Do we know the record low in Arizona? If we look at our picture over here, we see that the record low is negative 40. So let's fill that in. All right, is. When you see is in math, that means equals, or is the same as. So we're going to do an equal sign. 1.6 times, well, that's pretty self-explanatory, the record low in Rhode Island. Do we know the record low in Rhode Island? We don't. That's our question. What is the record low in Rhode Island? So let's use a variable to represent that since we don't know it yet. Let's use R, since we're talking about Rhode Island. Okay, so we've got our equation and we can solve this, right? But to solve it, we need to get our variable low. So we're going to say, okay, what did they do to the variable? They multiplied by 1.6. So we're going to divide by 1.6 on both sides. 1.6 divided by 1.6 is 1. So we're left with 1 times R, which is just R. Variables alone, hooray! Yay! And then negative 40 divided by 1.6 to find out what that record low temperature in Rhode Island is. I'm going to check your paper to see that you've done this and calculated that record low in Rhode Island. I'm not going to give you